Now that you've created your theory of change and log frame for your project, you need to think about how you will measure the progress and success of your program. While going through this process, think about your inputs, outputs, outcomes, and goal, and ask yourself how you will measure each of those components. By creating precise measures or indicators for each component, you'll be creating ways to track your program's progress. You may find that you need to be more specific in your log frame component definitions in order to be able to measure them. An indicator is a quantitative or qualitative factor or variable that provides a simple and reliable way to measure achievement, to reflect the changes connected to an intervention, or to help assess the performance of an activity. Essentially, they're ways of measuring specific parts of the project. Indicators typically fall under one of the following categories. At the very basic level, we have output indicators, which measure things like products, goods, and services which result from a development intervention. They may also include changes resulting from the intervention which are relevant to the achievement of outcomes. For example, in our sample project, some output indicators might include number of people trained as community-based trainers and number of parents and caring adults trained in SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management through community-based trainers, or CBTs. Output indicators are usually measured through simple techniques like counting. Next, outcome indicators measure the likely or achieved short-term and medium-term effects of an intervention's outputs. For example, in our sample project, we might measure the percent change in knowledge of SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management by parents and caring adults trained by CBTs. This kind of indicator is often measured through the comparison of a pre- and post-test. We'll discuss other data collection and analysis methods in modules 4 and 5. Next, process indicators measure the internal dynamics of implementing organizations, their policy instruments, their service delivery mechanisms, their management practices, and the linkages among these. These often align with output indicators. For example, if we track the number of parents and caring adults trained in SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management through CBTs as an output, we might also track the number of trainings held by CBTs for parents and caring adults in those topics to ensure the process is going smoothly as well. If we see that lots of people are being trained in a small number of trainings, we might ask the CBTs to have more trainings more frequently with fewer numbers of attendees to ensure greater quality of the trainings. Just a note that there are usually not any indicators created for assumptions. There are some good guidelines for designing and defining your indicators. You can remember them by the acronym SMART. The S in SMART stands for specific. It measures only the component of the log frame, the output, the purpose, or the goal, that it is intended to measure, and no other components of the design. Let's take our sample outcome indicator as an example. Percent of change in knowledge of SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management by parents and caring adults trained by CBTs. This indicator is specific as we know what kind of knowledge we are measuring, and it maps to the outcome increase in knowledge of parents and caring adults in the log frame. The M stands for measurable. The indicator can actually be measured through counting, observation, analysis, testing, or other types of analysis. The sample indicator is measurable through a pre- and post-test, asking parents what they know about the management of SGBV, HIV, and AIDS. Again, we'll talk more about types of measurement in modules 4 and 5. The A stands for achievable or attributable. The indicator gives a realistic measure for the amount or level of change to occur. Attributable means you can link the measured change back to the program intervention, but not other factors. Our indicator is achievable because we think that the trainings will affect change in knowledge, and it's attributable because we think this change will be because of the trainings and no other factors. The R stands for relevant. The indicator describes the underlying issue and relates to the project. Our outcome indicator is relevant because it measures change that we are trying to affect in the program, not tangential issues, such as % change in resources allocated to SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management. The T stands for time bound. The indicator is attached to a time frame, stating when and how often it will be measured. Because we don't know the timeline of our sample project, our outcome indicator is not yet time bound. However, we can add this as soon as the timeline is decided, changing the indicator to % of change in knowledge of SGBV, HIV, and AIDS management by parents and caring adults trained by CBTs before and after training. Other considerations for indicator development. You should think about these questions and outline your answers in the log frame as well. So the first question is, how are you going to use the data from all of these indicators? There are several different purposes, including reporting, accountability, feedback to participants, advocacy, and other uses. Next, think about how often you will collect these indicators. Will you collect them monthly, quarterly, yearly? Consider how soon you think you might see change happen for each of the indicators, and then select the appropriate frequency of data collection. Next, think about who will collect the data for these indicators. Will it be you, your staff, or partners? Think about their capacity for data collection. Next, how will you share findings on your program's progress from your indicators? Will this be through reports? Will it be through meetings and presentations, or maybe another format? We'll discuss more about how to share findings in Module 6. Finally, think about how you check to make sure the data is accurate. You can cross-check information you collect through your indicators with data collected on the same topic from other sources, and you can also do thorough checks on the data you do collect. So in Module 1, you learned about the basics of M&E. In Module 2, you learned more about designing your M&E plan using a theory of change and log frame, and started drafting these for your own project. In this module, you learned how to build up your log frame to include indicators that will measure the progress of your project. We also covered different types of indicators, output, outcome, and process, and how to make SMART indicators that are specific, measurable, attributable, relevant, and time-bound. We also thought through some of the logistics of collecting data for your indicators. In Modules 4 and 5, which we'll cover during our live lecture together, we'll discuss some tools that will help you collect this data and further analyze it to assess your project's progress. So now take some time to review the resources and begin the activity before our live lecture on Monday. See you then.